Now on this video, and it's our project of the day, we're going to try to recover this seat that belongs to Turbo Steve. He's already taken off the old cover on one of the previous visits to the shop, and I have a little time today that I can spend. I'm going to try to show how I've gone and covered these seats in the past. And on our channel, Windy Space U, there are probably 20 or 25 videos covering other seats that we've done. Now some of the seats, like the Ducati seats that we've done, we've had issues with the rubber being out of shape, and we've sanded and carved and done other things. Normally, I've done several of these seats already. They're pretty common. It's very difficult to get this area here not to wrinkle. This part is, well, not impossible, but it's tricky. And in the back to get this nice edge. But again, batting would make this a little bit nicer. Steve chose not to go with batting. And, well, we're going to see how it comes out. Maybe it'll come out fine anyway. So step one is you need some vinyl material to make a cover. There are two types of vinyl if you buy it off the internet. Vinyl that is made not to stretch, and there is vinyl that on purpose it's made with an X-weave pattern, so it stretches in pretty much all dimensions. Now this we bought from, well, Steve bought it, but I bought it also from Joann Fabric. They have a lot of choices of colors. In fact, one of the things we've been thinking about doing is doing a custom seat for our green Kawasaki. May or may not happen. But again, the most important thing, step one, is get the vinyl that stretches in all dimensions. Now, the vinyl is typically $10 to $20 a yard. If you buy a yard, you usually can get more than one seat out of it, depending, especially like the small Ducati seats, you can get more. But the first thing is to stretch out, and send out the material, lay it out, and you've got to cut a piece with plenty extra. And this is what I wanted to step one here, because I'm trying to make this easy for an average person. This is not a high-tech thing. And even if you don't have perfect results, you can always go back and redo the staples, and I'm going to show that. So the first thing is to take our vinyl material, and where's the seat? Holy, right, we lost the seat. You think I would edit that out? Not a chance. Okay, so we don't want to lay the seat this way. We want to lay it this way. Now, I want to be sure, you can see why, that when I pull this up in all dimensions, I want to have plenty of material so that I have a handle to do the stretching. Now see, if I did that, I'm in big trouble. So I want to have at least that amount of material, at least that amount. Back doesn't matter, we've got plenty. Here we've got plenty, so I can take basically a pen here, mark. In fact, because this is such a big seat, it looks like we're only going to get maybe one seat out of this. I don't know. So we'll take that out, and now the other thing it's nice and handy to have if you have a pair of relatively sharp scissors to cut the vinyl. So what I did, I turned this a little bit to the angle. We've got plenty. I want to just check, because once you start this process, you can't go back and add an inch. You can always trim an inch off. But now it turns out if you do this sometimes with the long seats, you can get, if you buy the wide vinyl, you can get two. Sometimes you can get two out of the smaller. They come in two different widths sometimes. But anyway, Joann Fabric has plenty of choices. But the first step, it's a real simple thing. When you get the vinyl, a lot of times I've tried to do this on an angle, thinking that the X pattern would give me, and there are sometimes you can get a different curve if you put the material on a diagonal. But for all practical purposes, to make it as straightforward, this is not this is really upholstery 101. And to just lay it out, make sure you have enough material. And now the next thing is I have to go get my stapler and some 3/8 and 1/4 inch staples. Now sometimes the 3/8 staples are fine. Sometimes you need 1/4 inch. Sometimes they don't go in, depending on how. When this material gets old, it gets rock hard. Sometimes the staples don't want to go in. It's always better to have the choices 3/8 and 1/4 inch. The other thing, they make staples that are heavy duty. You want heavy duty staples, not regular staples. Now, in doing upholstery work and restoration work on furniture, I did some furniture work for Art Conklin. I remember that we used all different staples. Anyway, the whole point was Here's the main thing. I need some different size, some 1/4 inch, some 3/8, some half. I always have some half just in case. But here's what the main thing is. Somewhere on it, it has to say heavy duty. If it doesn't say heavy duty, they're not going to, it's just not as good. It's worth paying the extra, whatever, 50 cents per pack. One box will do a bunch of seats anyway. You need this is just an ordinary typical hand stapler. I do have a power stapler. I just haven't found it useful at all. It's a lot easier for me because I'm old and decrepit to just use an ordinary hand stapler. I always like to start at one end just to get this roughly in place. We're just putting the rough shape on this. Now I'll see if these staples are going to work fine. Usually you got to press down with your second hand. Real handy, by the way, if you have a helper doing this. It doesn't mean you can't do it without a helper, though. So, and if the helper is going to, he can help you hold it in place. So what we basically have, step one, we've got this tacked into position. Now what I'm going to do is just carefully, without making too much of a thing to do here, I can trim some of this away, just to make this easier to make the bend. And we're going to constantly be trimming and throwing these little pieces away. Because what I want to do, I want to get this piece up just roughly in position here. It's going to move 100 times. Now I've got to really get this piece in. If you can do it this way, of course it's a lot easier. Now, we have it, it's just really rough, super rough. Get a piece here. Now there's probably professional upholsterers, they would laugh at how I do this, but it's okay. At the end of the day, the job gets done. And they can probably do it a lot faster, but in the end, probably not a whole lot better. Okay, so we just have this, and that's the beginning step. We just have it roughed into position so it can't move around, and we have plenty of overage on all sides. That's the first part of getting the seat recovered. Now from this point on, I want to leave enough material, but I don't want to have so much that it's cumbersome. This is going to be enough. I can see already as I go along here, I can get rid of a little bit of the overage. I want to leave enough on that I can get a little handle on this. Now, from this point on, this really isn't that complicated. But I want to take a piece here. Each time I do this, I'm going to stretch it just a little bit more. So because I don't have a helper, I've got to struggle a little bit here. And what I'm doing, I'll just get this. Everything is just tacked into position. And you can see little by little, I'm going to wind up having to take that wrinkle out. Well, that's not a big deal to do that. But before I do that, I want to make about, let's see, up to here, I want to make a little bit of a stretch on. So now what I'm doing, I'm stretching it. I can use the nose of the stapler actually to do a little stretching. And what I've done is take a little bit of that material out. Now I can flip it around this way. Take a little bit of this material. These are not all of these staples eventually going to come out when we put the final staples in. These are just to rough it in. And the wrinkles don't mean anything. We can get them all out. Okay, so we've got this. Now we've got to work on this corner. Again, I'm trying to work from front to back. So now I can trim a little bit more of this. This will just make it a little bit easier. You'd like to have about 1 inch of material to work with. And you're constantly just cutting some back, cutting some back. This, again, just makes it a little bit easier. Now, anytime you have a wrinkle, you want to take the middle of the wrinkle, the absolute middle, and that's where you want to put the staple. In other words, I'm going to try to show this. I'm stretching it side by side and pulling it back. Go from the middle of the wrinkle on. So now you can see I've got half of that wrinkle, but there's still a little wrinkle here. Now I'm going to take that wrinkle, and I'm going to, the original staple came out, but I'm going to do this over and over. just move that little stapler up. And we're going to do this several times. Each time we do it, we're going to be stretching it just a little bit more. Now I notice this one's not going to come out. So I've got to pull that staple out. I could just tell by looking at that, we have too much material there, and I don't want to take it out yet. But I'm going to take the middle of the wrinkle, pull it up, middle of the wrinkle, use the nose of the stapler to stretch it. This one, a staple array, we may have to use longer staples, I don't know. It depends on how hard that material is. As time goes by, that material hardens up. Before we put any heat on this, I want to get that. And you just constantly here taking the old staples out, put the new staples in as this starts to conform. Now you can see we've got that corner done. Now obviously I'll do the other corner off camera, and then we'll start working our way forward. So at this point we have the back almost final stretch. Now what we'll do at the end is just with the nose of the stapler, take each staple out, push it in just a little more. But what this does, it lets all the wrinkles reside now in the inner lip, which is, and we just keep stretching it in with using the nose of the stapler and pushing it in, pushing it in, pushing it in. And what'll happen is, now we're gonna work from this point. We've got this point, actually it came out pretty nice. We're gonna see we've got a wrinkle up here. We're gonna work this wrinkle all the way, and then we wind up at the end. The end is the most difficult part to do, but little by little. The nice thing about this is it's a non-committal project. You can always go back and use the other cover even if you make a mess out of it. But it's I think it's reasonable to do, and I think if you watch any of these videos, not only mine, any of them, it's a relatively simple project for under $20. What I want to do with the green bike is find the blue that matches. Kawasaki did make blue seats at some time, and see if they have that fabric, and it's a non-committal because I have 2 seats for the bike. Now here's where, at this point in time, I want this all to, I've got a wrinkle here, I want this to flow in that direction. So a lot of times it's easier to take one staple out. They come right out, of course. If they come out too easy, you use the next bigger size staple. Use the nose of the stapler, get one in there. Now I see I still have a little bit of a wrinkle. Again, I'm going to have to do this 1,000 times in the course of doing this, but now you can see what's happened. I've got that smooth, and I'm going to work my way right up to the front, constantly pulling this material up in this direction. So now we pretty much have the back the way we want it. I'm still right to the very end. I leave this extra material because anywhere I want to get a wrinkle out, when we start heating this, what's going to happen is I may develop a new wrinkle that isn't here now. Now see, here's what batting would do. Batting would make this just a little bit flatter, a little bit nicer. And again, but it's Steve's motorcycle, of course, and I'm not going to tell him how to customize bikes, but that would have made that a little bit nicer. And this looks like it's, hey, like it's coming along pretty good. We're pretty good here up to here. And now we're going to just work one side up, the other side, one side, the other side, and work our way right up to the front. And then the front is the most challenging of all. Now this for sure is going to be a little challenging here. This is where you really do benefit from having a helper, but I want to just tack it roughly before I start to stretch it. Just rough it in. That'll hold that while I'm working on it. And then I'll go back one by one, take the staples out, and stretch it just a little bit more. Now see, there's a little wrinkle here I can get rid of. We got a piece in the way, so I have to work on each side of it, rather than I can't really get that piece out of there. And now we're going to have to start working that curve. We're going to have to start pulling that down. Now I'm going to have one side tacked. I'm going to tack the other side off camera. Now every time we do this, I'm going to look for this wrinkle. I want to make, wherever I see a wrinkle, I want to make it, pull it in exactly the opposite direction. So just when we're still in the rough stage, we haven't gotten the wrinkles out yet. I see a wrinkle this way, it means I've got to pull this way. I see this wrinkle going this way, I've got to take the staples out, pull it this way. And I have to go back and forth many times now until I get basically a good amount of those wrinkles out. Now just to hold the front in position while I do some more stretching, I can get rid of some of this extra material. But it's all going to change. I'm just going to have to keep, when we actually start using heat this and pull this back. But right now I only need one staple in each little piece. So now we have the front tacked in, the back pretty much tacked in, and we've got to get this wrinkle out. Well, if there's a certain types of material, a thin vinyl, you can just pull this like it's rubber. This is nice heavy material. This is really nice stuff. So what I'm going to do, I can do a hair dryer or a heat gun. If I use a heat gun, you got to be real careful. I'm going to warm this material, then take out the staples and just start. Imagine I'm always going against the wrinkle. In other words, when I pull this, I don't want to pull here. I want to pull this wrinkle this way, this wrinkle this way, and just keep stretching it. Go do the other side, come back, go back, and at some point, we'll little by little see that wrinkle start to disappear, and then we'll have to do the nose section. The back is already done, back is happy, and we're just going to have to, this is going to take time. Okay, so it's time, we got to get these big wrinkles out. We're going to start by warming the vinyl. Again, if you use a heat gun, you can burn the vinyl. This is a little more forgiving if you're doing your first seat. Might want to think about just doing it with a hair dryer. Even better, if you live in a warm weather climate, put the seat just like it is now out on the hood of your car on the dashboard and let it cook. The heat, right now, heat is your friend. Now this is where it's tricky when you're doing this alone. And of course in my shop, I always try to plan a way of doing everything alone. I don't have a live-in helper here. Now I'm getting that wrinkle. You can see I've got it out. Now I've got to spin this back. A little more difficult than it looks. Stretch it with the nose of the gun. Stretch it. Stretch it. This is only temporary. And I've got more of it out now. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Pull that side. And you can see what's going to happen as I stretch this. When the material is warm, it's going to start to conform. And I've got to go back and forth, back and forth. But little by little, we're going to get all those wrinkles out. Okay, I thought I'd show this in stages. We're down to the last little bit. And again, if I heat this, or if I lived in a sunny weather climate, I have this because it's black, it'll turn into a solar panel. Out in the backyard, I've done these with no heat at all. Just pull them and stretch them and use the natural sun. Save the planet. Okay, we're starting to get there. Patience, heat, and always work one side, the other side, one side, the other side. Now as I'm doing this, because I'm stretching the material, I've developed some wrinkles in the back. No big deal. We're going to just pull the staples out there at the very end, because then at the end we're going to put staples, new staples around the whole edge and then pull out the old ones. No problem at all. So far, so good. You just can't try to rush the system. The system is you got to work it and work that vinyl back and forth. Heat it, work it, heat it, staple it, stretch it. And when you're done, the results speak for themselves. This when you have an old ratty seat on a bike with a hole in it or a rip, and you can do this for 20 bucks and do it yourself and take pride in it, it's a good project. So now as we come to the hard part here is going to be the nose. I see I still have a little bit of a wrinkle in here, and this is where batting helps. The batting would cover some of that up. Would just make it stretch easier. But I still have a little bit of a wrinkle here. So I thought I'd show one of these in real time. And there's really no high-tech stuff here. It's the whole theory of you pull against the wrinkle 90 degrees and you just keep doing it and heating it and doing it and eventually it works. Now, I see I have that. If I just pull here, I want to show this trick. If I just pull here, it's like pushing a car with a banana. You gotta get this material here to stretch. So I've got to reach in. I've got to pull it from inside. And you can see I've got more of that. Now, when I've got more of it, I need to take some heat. Now I'm putting some heat into it. If I were doing this every day, I'd use a heat gun because I'd have more confidence. But because I have very low confidence, I don't do it every day. Maybe 2 or 3 times a year we do this for somebody. But you get a lot of satisfaction out of a project like this because you can bring a bike into the shop and in an hour, 2 hours the latest, it can look really good. Now it's stretchable. I can grab that. It's a lot more flexible. I can bend it around. Again, here's where it would be neat to have a helper. But it's always good, I've found, to be able to gauge all your work, even when you're doing something complicated that you don't depend on anybody except your own two little hands. Okay, we got 90% of it out now. There's a little bit more, but you can see little by little we're coming up on it. Now I've got to do the same thing, and I've got to do it over and over and over until I get the stretch I want. And then the last thing is to get these corners just right. Now a good tip you can bite yourself in the behind right here is when you have if you start to trim this material too small. I left it oversized here until I get all the staples in. See, I want to have, if I got to trim this back eventually, but I want that material there. So if I see a wrinkle, I can take a couple staples out and just pull that back. So at this point, the cover is totally stretched on, but that's only a temporary thing. Now, if you were to just run out, put this on a motorcycle, yeah, you could do that, I'm sure. But we do a couple extra little things, and especially for good friends like Turbo Steve. Well, now the last thing is, I'm going to put a row of staples around the whole perimeter here. I can even pull this down. I want to go right around as many as possible, even put a couple extra in. It doesn't have to look pretty. It's got to not pop out. And we wound up at the end of this using all 3/8 staples, just because this material was pretty hard. 30-year-old part, 25-year-old part, whatever it is. But I'll put those extra staples in. I don't need to do that on camera. Trim a little bit of this back with a razor blade, and I think when we were done with that, I think anybody, that's for all purposes a brand new seat. Now again, I think that really came out pretty nice. I'm sure Steve will love it. But anyway, now as I put these staples in, this is just a little, I don't know, a little trick. I put this up against the mirror here. Take the staple gun, and I can start at one end, and I can just put a little bit of a stretch on every staple. The back side of this doesn't have to look pretty, but those extra staples, as time goes by and you do your track days or whatever you do, or I'm not sure. Most of my friends, you know, you do really ride the bike. That's the purpose of doing this. But I really want to make sure I have plenty of staples around here. I don't want to, at some point in time, but a little bit of extra effort this is going to take. Now, there's one other thing that's worth mentioning. If you take this right now and put this out on a hood, before you even do anything with it, put it out on the hood of the car, again, a couple hours. What happens, the vinyl is self-conforming. It'll mold to its own shape here. And even though we didn't use batting on this, this really did come out pretty good. I may have to double the price. So the last part of this job is I have to check with my quality control inspector, who just happened to be walking by. Karen,
yeah.
How do you like Steve's seat?
Really nice.
What do you think?
I like it a lot.
All right. All right, Steve, it's for you. Come pick it up. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
It is really nice.